All right, welcome everyone. We're doing a YouTube live experiment here. I'm joined by my good friend Cory Muscara, who's joining us from the East Coast right now. Good morning, Cory.
Hi, Sean, and hey everyone tuning in. Good to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Cory is a wonderful mindfulness teacher. He has a great podcast out called Practicing Human, one of my favorite podcasts out there. I posted a link to it in the chat section here on YouTube. I encourage everyone to check it out. Cory, are you posting just about daily there?
Yeah, so it started out as a daily, like legit daily podcast, 7 days a week, and then people said, we like daily, but like give us time off on the weekends. I'm like, totally. If you want the weekends off, I'll take the weekends off too. So it's 5 days a week now, and they're short episodes. The 5 to 15 minutes is a long episode. It's just the tagline is every day we're getting a little better at life. So like little snippets, things to think about, a shower for your mind.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that with everyone. I really enjoy the episodes that I've listened to.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah. So I thought this might be a good opportunity for us to just chit chat about mindfulness and mindfulness related matters.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that maybe we could chat about new addition to Jon Kabat-Zinn's Attitudinal Factors of Mindfulness, where he's including gratitude and generosity as an attitude of mindfulness.
Yeah. So for those who might not be familiar, Jon Kabat-Zinn really pioneered mindfulness in Western medicine, or at least made it more mainstream. And he created the curriculum Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. And as part of that curriculum, in his first book, Full Catastrophe Living, he outlined 7 attitudinal factors of mindfulness: non-judging, non-striving, letting go, beginner's mind, acceptance, patience, and trust.
Wow, that was impressive.
Yeah, I had to say those many times. And then recently, I don't know how recently, I think within the last few years, maybe 5, maybe even last 10 years, he's added generosity and gratitude, which has only come onto my radar in like the last year or so. So I always think it's interesting, right, when someone tries to outline like the qualities of mindfulness and comes up with 7 and then adds more. It speaks to this ever evolving thing that we're trying to define, as Saki Santarelli would say, like F the ineffable. So yeah, I thought it might be cool to just what you think of those and where they fit in your practice.
Sure. Yeah. Well, they're definitely big parts of the practice of practicing human, for sure.
Yeah.
You brought this up just a few minutes ago, so I haven't had a lot of time to digest it. But those 2 factors that you mentioned of generosity and gratitude are, I think of them as factors of the heart. And the heart is at the center of mindfulness. The heart of mindfulness, usually, Jon Kabat-Zinn talks about this non-judgmental moment-to-moment awareness as being the pithy definition of mindfulness. And that is the heart of mindfulness. And we can kind of unpack non-judgment in so many different ways. And, we can talk about the heart of mindfulness of like what it is and what it is not. Is it not judging, or is it caring awareness? Jack Kornfield often uses the expression loving awareness, which I think he got from Ram Dass many years ago. And so, gratitude and generosity for sure are heart related. They come from the heart, in my opinion. I think generosity is also tied to wisdom as well. But yeah, it's a little bit tricky sometimes. I'm impressed that you could list off 7 and the 9 attitudinal foundations just at the top of a hat. I can't do that, partly because when I talk about mindfulness, I try to boil it down to like fewer things and then kind of build on that, rather than give the impression that people have to know this list and they have to check off all these boxes while they're practicing mindfulness, or else it's not complete.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's not what Jon Kabat-Zinn's intention was whatsoever. But I think there's room for, explore all the factors, and then also just kind of boiling it down to that non-judgmental presence. But I'm glad that there's more emphasis on the heart qualities of mindfulness with those 2 new additions.
Yeah. So I like your framing of it as heart factors. I think that's been one of the critiques of secular mindfulness, is many people described it as like a sterilizing of traditional practices, like this rich tradition. And I see that argument, and at the same time, I understand how things need to be packaged in a particular way to make it accessible to people. Just because you had mentioned non-judgment, I am trying to start a movement for us to replace non-judgment with curiosity.
Nice.
Because curiosity inherent in curiosity is a non-judgmental attitude. It's inviting, it's welcoming, it's leaning into the experience, not for the sake of making it bad or good or bad, just like, what is this, rather than like, why is this? And so, as just since you had mentioned non-judgment, curiosity feels a little bit more warm and it doesn't vilify the judging mind. And when I think of like a moment of mindfulness, it's something that is inviting with warmth, all expressions of the mind. And so I think that kind of like is a nice segue into these other 2 additions of generosity and of gratitude, which are really interesting because they're words that have a lot of different layers to them and can be cultivated in different ways. Like gratitude, right? You could think of as creating your gratitude list and writing 3 good things that, the salmon meal you had or whatever it might be for dinner. It's like, yeah, gratitude. Now I'm cultivating gratitude. But within a meditation practice, right? Like a moment of mindfulness, it's not like we're actively saying, I'm so grateful for my family or my friends or even this moment. Like, we're not reciting words. I mean, you could, but my sense is that's not what Jon is pointing to. And so I'm curious how you've infused, if at all, gratitude into your practice over the years. And is it something that is actually inherent to mindfulness? And if so, what does that actually mean or look like?
That's a great question. Like recently, gratitude had a big role in my practice just over the last week, in the sense of, I'm assuming that you've heard of heart math. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Heart Math is a company who have different tech products and meditations and whatnot. But I have this thing called Inner Balance that just kind of hooks up to my ear, and it measures my heart rate variability. And when I open the app, basically my practice is to close my eyes and reflect, or actually I put my hand on my heart, over my heart, and I try to feel the palpitations of my heart beating. And I just bring this like sense of appreciation and gratitude to my heart, or to this heart that's beating inside this chest, and also reflect on things that I appreciate, or people I appreciate, or moments I appreciate, or things I appreciate about what I'm doing in this world, or different forms of appreciation. I just kind of allow to bring that in, into the body and into the heart. And I try to make this more of a somatic practice. And it's amazing. Every time I feel genuine feelings of appreciation and gratitude, as I'm staying connected with the physical sensations in my heart, I notice on the HeartMath app, on the Inner Balance app, that my sort of green levels rise and peak when I'm in that state. And as soon as I get distracted, or maybe fall into judgment or planning or something else, then my score starts dropping. And of course, it's not about the score, it's not about any of that, but it's amazing how this tracks the meditation. So, and I've noticed, I don't know, you and I could talk about this offline too, but I got this thing called Whoop. I don't know if
I have an Aura ring.
Yeah, totally. Tracks HRV, and maybe we've talked about this before, but I see my HRV levels, and as soon as I started doing the HeartMath meditation, where I invite these feelings of gratitude and appreciation into my chest and lungs and heart, and really stay with that as a meditation, my Whoop scores improve.
Wow.
Even if I only practice the HeartMath 10, 15 minutes, I notice dramatic improvements in my overall heart rate variability scores, which have a big impact on our and mental health. So it's a long-winded answer of the short-term practice of bringing gratitude in. But to your larger question, I think I tend to think of gratitude as more of like a consequence, or like a byproduct. I don't know that. I think you can be mindful and grateful at the same time, but I don't know that gratitude is necessarily inherent into sort of a pure awareness. One thing that's been really interesting to me, this is my new favorite book, by the way, Neurodharma, Rick Hanson. It's like literally my favorite nonfiction book of all time.
I'm gonna order it right now.
It's like mind-blowing.
Really?
Like every chapter is like, oh my goodness, this is the best chapter I've ever written. Oh my god, this is the best chapter I've ever read. Not written, but anyway, there's this piece that Rick Hanson talks about where so the universe is expanding in its 3 dimensions all the time. Ever since the Big Bang, the universe keeps expanding outward. And there's also the dimension of time, and the dimension of time is also expanding into new areas. Like if you really think of it as a dimension, like we're always on that cusp, this expanding dimension. And people like Dr. Keltner from the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley, makes a good case that a sense of awe is sort of the core, or like a part of mindfulness. I believe that's what he says, but there's this strong emphasis on this sense of awe. And I think when we're sort of on that cusp of the expanding dimension of now, when we really are on that like edge of newness, then that sense of awe, I think, just naturally increases. And like inside that awe, I think there is sort of a form of like, this is amazing. And like part of that, like the gratitude kind of, it, to me, when I'm truly present in that expansive dimension of now, and there's that sense of awe present, like, wow, like truly, like this is all new dimension, new experience, brand new. Like inside that awe, it feels laced with gratitude. Like, how lucky am I to be able to experience this, or how amazing this is? And I feel grateful to be able to bear witness and to feel this. And I have no idea what's coming next, but I feel grateful to be a part of this nowness. And I think curiosity is also inherent in that too. So I think I'm contradicting myself. At first I said that it's more of a consequence, that gratitude is more of a consequence, but the more I talk about it, the more I think, yeah, like when I'm truly present, there is that sense of like amazingness, that sense of awe, and that sense of, wow, like I feel so grateful to be able to experience this right now.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Beautiful. This is where it gets a little complicated, because this conversation could end up setting someone up for thinking, if I'm not experiencing awe in my practice, am I not mindful? And I think, it can be helpful to think of presence or mindfulness as on a continuum, or something that has different grades that can be deepened into. And I like this idea of the closer we get to the newness, I think you said, of each moment, the novelty, the freshness that comes with this sort of bare attention and beginner's mind. The more we embody that, the more there is a spontaneous sense of awe, and I would argue even a spontaneous sense of gratitude. And even, since we're talking about generosity, like a spontaneous sense of generosity. I think many of these qualities of mind that, let's just say that even Jon outlined, patience, letting go, acceptance, trust, non-striving, beginner's mind, a lot of these emerge organically as we come closer to the truth of experience, come closer to direct experience, and there's less of an interface between us and it. And when it collapses on itself, we move into non-dual. Then that spontaneous expression, perhaps I'd have to kind of assess it, because I'm not in that space in this moment. But it feels true that those qualities of mind organically arise. And so I think this is a larger inquiry that we're not the first people to be having around, like, how do we conceptualize mindfulness? How are we defining it? And the trouble with that, because if it is this thing that only exists at, like, when we've just reduced the interface between us and experience so that awe organically arises, then it can create a sense of striving. And yet how we get to that place is by sort of letting go of the idea that it's in some future moment. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if we're losing people in this exploration, but
yeah, it's a fascinating. I think this is for everyone to kind of feel into and sense into in their own practice, and see, does gratitude and generosity come up the more present I really am with this experience? And I think you're right. I think when we really drop into this maybe more of the non-dual, like presence, or whatever you want to call it, those natural qualities are much more spontaneous. And with generosity, you know, like the more present we really are, and the more we see that this sense of self is largely constructed and maybe not so rigid as we think it is, and that our personalities and our sense of me is not quite as, I don't know, binary or like separate. The more we really sense into our interconnectedness through that sort of non-dual taste, the more we see that it's kind of silly to hoard things or to not be generous or to like take or to we all need to take care of ourselves, and usually we don't need near as much as we think we do. And so that sense of generosity, I think, does naturally come forth the more we sort of dissolve this sense of separate self through practice, and the more we see that we are all in this together, we're all interconnected, we all just want to be happy, and we're also able to tap into that felt sense of goodness when we are generous too, because it feels really good if we're coming from a good place.
Yeah. And maybe for those who are hearing this and going, this is nice, sounds a bit like a philosophical discussion, like how can I apply this to my practice? I would say, let's start with gratitude. Notice how you can actively cultivate gratitude, maybe by reflecting on what you have in your life and why you appreciate that. And then notice that feeling that arises of gratitude. There'll be like the thoughts that trigger it, that activate it, and then like the accompanying felt sense. And then what's it like to maybe infuse that into your awareness while you're focusing on the breath? Not so much saying like, oh, I'm so grateful for this breath right now, although you could use that as a prompt, but just in general, like this soft, grateful awareness as something to explore. And the same with generosity, of gifting the world around you, other people, your presence, your mindfulness, because it really is. It's not only the modern currency, but I think it's the thing that we're all craving and losing when whittling down in our current society. And so you could see your practice as a form of generosity. And then in your own meditation practice, just what's it like to perceive your awareness of the breath as a gift to your breath, or a gift to a dimension of yourself, or an emotion, or pain, and to meet that with a sense of like loving, generous awareness. I think that might be a nice framework that you can start to bring into your practice in a very tangible way, and see like, how does this feel, and where does it maybe fill in, or make more full a moment of mindfulness, a moment of awareness. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And let us know what you think. Write a comment in the comment section about whether you think that these factors of generosity or gratitude are inherent to mindfulness or not. How you experience gratitude and generosity with your meditation practice. We can practice these practices internally and externally. So might be a nice segue for me to thank Cory Muscara for your time. You're very generous with your time today. I'm really grateful for that. Thank you so much for joining me. It was just kind of a powwow on this topic, and explore it ourselves, and to maybe be of use for some people who may find this interesting or useful. So again, please find Cory's podcast Practicing Human wherever you get your podcast. There's a link in the chat section here. Yeah, thanks, man. Any closing thoughts or?
No. Just words of guidance would be go easy. You don't need to understand everything, all of this. And at least the spirit of my podcast is we're just practicing. We're just learning little tidbits here and there that we can integrate into our own framework for how to best live this human life. We're all winging it. So, hopefully some of what we talked about here gives you a little bit of an ability to better wing it and enjoy the journey.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cory. And take good care, everybody.